his hoes. Different from head to toe. Sharp. What? He ain't no sharp. Hell yeah.
A daring thief and his elite gang steal millions in freight.
He was very intelligent. He saw flaws in the system and played them to their best.
The thing that was really amazing is they evolved their techniques, and the jobs kept getting bigger, they kept getting more organized.
Even when authorities saw him in action, they couldn't bring him down.
He was at the top of his game, and there was nothing we could do about it.
He was the greatest train robber America had ever seen. Find out how he did it, next on Masterminds. Billions of dollars of New York-bound consumer goods are carried by rail through New Jersey.
At any given time, there are hundreds of millions of dollars of merchandise out there.
But in the early 1990s, the Conrail train yards were hit with a spree of burglaries.
We started seeing some large amounts of merchandise taken. We started seeing some trains with 50, 100 cases missing.
Defeating every security measure thrown at them, thieves made off with hundreds of thousands of dollars in freight.
As a result, the railroad police had to have a constant presence. And every time a train came through, it had to be escorted by 2 or 3 police units.
The increased patrols ended thefts from the rail yards. But police soon discovered that the burglars had found an ingenious new way of stealing from the trains.
They gravitated from hitting stationary yards to specializing on the moving trains. As these became more frequent, we realized there must be an organized group doing this.
You can imagine there are hundreds and hundreds of miles of track out there. You can't have cameras everywhere at all places.
Even worse for police, the burglars had somehow found a way to pinpoint specific cars loaded with the most lucrative cargo.
They had committed hundreds and hundreds of thefts. They started understanding what trains had more expensive commodities.
Millions were now lost as high-end electronics and entire lines of designer clothes vanished from the trains.
Oh, it was very frustrating.
We actually saw these guys on the trains, sidling up the side of the trains, all in black outfits. Trains were doing about 20, 30 miles an hour. And if they knew that we were following them, all they had to do was jump off and run into the swamp.
That's why this group was so hard to catch.
Of course, everyone made the analogy of the Jesse James gang in the Wild West when people used to rob trains, coming up on horseback.
Then, on December 17th, 1999, the gang made their single biggest hit when they surgically struck a rail car containing a shipment of Tommy Hilfiger clothing.
50 cases of a designer clothing, you're looking at a retail value of maybe $100,000, $200,000 on one take, on one night.
Edward Mongan engineered America's greatest train theft operation and left police powerless to stop him. The question is, how did he do it? Edward Mongan is the mastermind behind America's greatest train robbers, the Conrail Boyz. He was fascinated by the railway from an early age.
Ed Mongan grew up in a Hoboken housing project, and as a teenager, like most kids there, were enamored with the trains that passed right alongside his home.
By the late 80s, Mongan and childhood friend Michael Santano are stealing from the trains parked behind his apartment building.
It was an evolution. He starts as vandalism and maybe minor thefts. The next thing, you steal a case of something, get some money for it.
But railway cop Anthony Dragani soon gets Mongan's number.
He was arrested time and time again.
First arrest was around the age of 14. Police would catch Eddie and some of his friends But the criminal justice system just kept letting them go because these were, quote-unquote, nonviolent property crimes.
Undeterred, Mongan returns to the yards with Centeno and takes things to the next level when he steals a key piece of equipment.
It's a two-way radio, which is used from an engineer running a train to talk to dispatchers or yard masters and anyone he wants to talk to, including the police department.
If you can figure out when the cops are around, when they're not around, you'd be a lot more successful.
Scoring this high-tech hardware is the turning point in Mongan's life of crime. The kid who watched the world of the railway from his bedroom window now sets about mastering its language.
He must have listened to hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of talk between trains and dispatchers and police officers.
Mongan's commitment to learning sets him apart from his friends.
They really didn't have an interest in listening to a train radio for a long period of time. He did. He saw that it was important to know when the trains were coming so he could plan what they were going to steal.
He would scans to see who called in sick, how many officers would be on that night.
He knew all the lingo, he knew all the codes.
He had all the call signals down, he knew the language.
Mongan now convinces his friends that his inside knowledge will lead to big scores.
There weren't many opportunities that they could get, and this was a big opportunity for them.
So he was pretty smart with handling the gang. There were some very violent people in that gang with extensive records, and he had to handle them just right.
To help control the group, Mongan appoints Michael Centeno as his second in command.
Michael's a very large guy. He's very intimidating looking, and I think Eddie kept him around a lot just for that fact.
For the first time, Mongan leads his rookie gang on a rail yard hit.
They'd have jumper cables, and those are used to circumvent the electricity coursing through the fences in the area. Once the electricity is diverted, they would snip through.
In the yard, spotters watch for police, while other gang members boost whatever merchandise they can from the stationary cars.
If he could figure out when those trains were arriving, then he could put his people in a position to steal from them. They evolved their techniques, technology.
The Conrail Boyz score big, and the money rolls in. Mongan revels in their success, and even orders personalized headgear for his gang.
Embroidered with the initials CRB, Conrail Boyz on the front in orange, and on the back it would be embroidered with their nickname or their handle.
Mongan is nicknamed Da Brain, reflecting the respect he commands.
He took up a leadership role, and a lot of people tagged along because it was a big payday for them.
To counter the rising thefts in the yards, authorities amp up security. In response, Mongan changes his strategy. He decides to hit moving trains.
That was another evolution they made. We're a lot better off riding on a moving train and stealing than walking into a high-security yard.
He returns to his stolen two-way radio and goes deeper into the system.
He would learn who the dispatchers were that controlled certain portions of traffic or certain trains. He began calling in actually to the dispatchers and disguising his voice and obtaining information when a train was going to be coming.
And it provided him with invaluable information as to where the cargo would be, when it would be there, and what it would be.
After a while, he started to know the numbers on the sides of the trains, and he figured out which ones were the good ones.
Hitting moving trains promises great rewards, but is extremely dangerous. Aware of the risks, Mongan prepares his team with military discipline.
There were certain guys who were really agile, so they would get on the trains. Other guys who were really strong, who would be like their muscle and protect them.
Then, on December 17th, 1999, Mongan IDs a rich shipment of Tommy Hilfiger clothes and alerts the team. That night, he instructs Michael Centeno to steal a van from the Conrail yards, knowing the vehicle won't arouse suspicion if spotted by police.
Centeno was his expert car thief. He could steal vans. He could break into them, steal them in minutes.
Centeno rendezvous with the rest of the team, all of whom are decked out in the official Conrail Boyz uniform.
Sneakers, black fatigue pants, black sweatshirts and gloves. Just, if you think about it, they're almost like a modern-day ninja, if that's the only way you can describe them.
Each gang member is outfitted with the tools of the trade, starting with specialized phones.
A Nextel cell phone is encrypted. You can't scan it through the public airwaves, so it's very secure.
Mungan now reveals the plan of attack.
And each would get their assignment.
It was very detailed. They were all given their specific jobs on what they had to do.
One group would be the counter-surveillance people, and they would just look for police officers in the area. And then there was another group who would actually pick the cargo up. And then there were what we call the train jumpers, the guys who would actually get on and do the break-ins.
The target train is due to arrive at the port of Newark in the early morning hours. The recovery team is instructed to roll out to the swampy terrain of North Bergen. The counter-surveillance unit patrols the track while Mungan and the jumpers proceed north to a remote intercept point.
The lookouts would be monitoring the police scanner. If any police came into the area, there was immediate notification.
As the train speeds into view, the jumpers lay in wait for Mungan's signal.
They have night vision goggles. That's so they can see the markings on the trains.
The target car is identified. Mungan gives the order, and the assault begins.
They would find locations where the ground is level next to the train, where they could actually run alongside.
You have to run at the same pace as the train. You make the jump and you pull yourself on.
They got very good at that. I mean, some of the trains would be going 30 miles an hour, and they were in real good condition. Get their crew on board the train, and 2 members of the crew would be lookouts.
Timing is critical. They have only 7 minutes to do the job or risk overshooting the recovery team.
They'll get in between the 2 trailers. They'll climb up and sidle down the side of the train.
There's a 4-inch ledge that goes alongside of the rail car. You could actually see the gravel passing you as the train's moving underneath your feet. Really amazing is at 30 or 40 miles an hour, they would still walk along that edge, just hold on to the top of the container.
Mungan hits the jackpot. Over $200,000 worth of high-end designer clothes.
So they would even get inside of the container and pull the door closed, so they were undetected.
We'll just keep going through what's desirable and then stack it up.
Minutes later, the train reaches the drop-off point of North Bergen.
It was a wall of boxes coming off the train.
The recovery crew is soon on its way in the stolen Conrail van.
And they meet up. And they pick up the items.
Edward Mungan and his Conrail Boyz have pulled off the perfect score. But his enormous success will soon send his million-dollar operation off the rails. Edward Mungan's Conrail Boyz have just stolen $250,000 worth of designer clothing from a speeding train.
Getting the goods off of the train is one thing, but being stuck with $200,000 or $300,000 worth of goods yourself doesn't help the enterprise. The enterprise has to get rid of the goods, otherwise the enterprise doesn't get paid.
But Mongan has this end covered. His fences are waiting to take the clothes off his hands.
He knows where to sell this stuff. Eddie would facilitate it where everything would be sold.
He ensures this part of the operation is top secret.
He was the only one who would meet with the fences. He controlled the information as to who those fences were.
He was the one that got paid. He was the one that would divvy it up amongst the group members. But the other parts of the group had no idea what percentage he was getting.
He controlled the group, he controlled the flow of the money, and he controlled the access to the outlets for the goods.
For the next 3 years, Mongan's operation grows. He brings in more gang members, greater profits, and leaves understaffed railroad police struggling to stop him.
You didn't know where on the trains in those hundreds of miles of tracks that his people were. At the same time, while you were watching him, he was watching you.
Although police do manage several arrests, they can't put a dent in Mongan's enterprise.
A lot of times, the Conrail Boyz would go to jail, but they would only spend maybe 2 or 3 months and then get probation.
You'd have a portion of the gang locked up, but the other portion would still be out. So it was kind of like spinning your wheels.
We've brought a number of single incident cases, but we've never been able to bring the larger racketeering case that this cried out for. We needed conversations, we needed sworn statements, and we needed people who would cooperate with the investigation, and we needed to develop informants to see if we can get information from the inside to prove the structure.
There's only so much manpower you have to do that.
But eventually, Mongan's operation grows so large, it attracts the attention of a police force with the resources to take him on.
When I heard about the Conrail Boyz and how established they were, I thought they were a perfect mission for the Division of Criminal Justice's Organized Crime Bureau.
In December of 2001, for the first time, undercover agent Paul Kay joins Anthony Dragani on one of his many stakeouts.
We literally sat in the weeds all night long. The trains came up and the Conrail Boyz saw something in the weeds and they started throwing rocks in our direction. I advised all units to converge and we collared about 4 suspects in 2 vehicles. Unfortunately, we missed Edward Mongan and we missed Michael Santano, but due to statements given from other suspects, we were able to identify that they were there.
Police are finally able to threaten gang members with racketeering charges. Faced with 20 years in jail, some of them start to talk.
They cooperated with us by giving us sworn statements about their operation. A lot of them went the further step and actually they wore body wires to record conversations with the group.
Determined to nail Mongan, Kay puts him under round-the-clock surveillance.
We have surveillance videos of him gambling his money away down Atlantic City, wads and wads of cash coming out of his pocket. That's maybe $10,000, $15,000 in a clip. Kind of get into that whole role of the hip-hop kind of NBA kind of star. He'd wear the best clothes. He'd always have the latest sneakers. He was driving high-end Mercedes-Benz vehicles. And then he would spend another $16,000 to put audio and video equipment in the vehicle, DVD players.
It also becomes clear to authorities that the leader takes excellent care of his men.
Everybody had their fancy car and could spend on restaurants and sports events and do everything you wanted.
Authorities now start an investigation of Mongan's finances.
We're going to pull bank records, we're going to pull tax records, we're going to find out every piece of property you own. We're going to pull your job history records, and we're going to prove that you haven't had a job, and this $2 million came from theft.
The mastermind continues to live the high life, unaware that his entire operation is now being closely monitored by police.
Made a concerted effort. I contacted the Port Authority Police, National Guard, the U.S. Customs, the FBI, and with a force of about 45 to 50 detectives and special agents, set up surveillance. We even had a helicopter in the air.
When he's finally tipped off that authorities are onto him, he takes evasive action.
Try to follow him a lot from his house. That was almost impossible. He was very paranoid. When he drove, he'd make illegal U-turns, go through red lights, and try to defeat any surveillance on him.
Unable to shake them, Mungan takes the offensive.
Mungan would drop cinder blocks through the police windshields to keep them away.
When this campaign of intimidation doesn't work, he targets Anthony Dragani directly.
Mungan and Santana were trying to hire someone to, quote, take me out. Pisses you off more than anything.
Police have finally had enough. They decide to take down the mastermind.
After the threat against Anthony Dragani, we tracked him down to a nightclub in Jersey City. We set up with about 20 officers and waited for him to come out. When he came out, we converged, placed him and Michael Santano under arrest.
Mungan is confronted with the overwhelming evidence against him.
So if you think you can beat the videotapes, fine. I'll hit you with the audio tapes. You want to beat the audio tapes? Fine. Here's the bank records. You never had a job. Where'd you get the money? You want to beat that? I've got the statements of the informants and the other people who had first-hand observations, sworn statements. That's the evidence.
The master train robber is hit with 38 federal racketeering charges. 23 others are indicted with him.
So for us to be able to get the indictments and be successful taking them down, you're always going to remember that.
The retail value of what he stole, after everything's said and done, would probably be in the tens of millions of dollars. They were at the top of their game. Everybody knew what they were doing, and for years, there was nothing we could do about it.
On September 3rd, 2004, the Conrail Boyz received sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. Mungan himself pleads guilty and receives 13 years.
The best feeling was when he stood up there in front of the judge and he said, "I'm guilty of all these crimes."
Edward Mungan now watches the railway from the window of his New Jersey prison cell. His 10-year spree as the country's greatest train robber is finally derailed.